This week, we received very good news on that front. We learned that the unemployment rate has fallen to its lowest level in nearly 2 years, as our economy added another 222,000 private sector jobs last month.
President Obama celebrating the encouraging employment numbers from last month, and it's time now for our Sunday group. Chris Stirewalt, Fox News digital politics editor, Nina Easton of Fortune magazine, Kevin Madden, a Republican strategist who was Mitt Romney's spokesman during his presidential campaign, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. And before we get to the panel, we have been trying to fact check, which is hard to do on Sunday mornings, and all indications are from our first interview with Margie Phelps. She claims that the suit by the Air Force general seeking the disbarment of 10 lawyers who are members of the church, she said that that claim has been dismissed. We see no indication that it has been dismissed, but we'll stay on top of that story. All right, let's get to the economy, and let's look at the numbers, Chris. Unemployment now down to 8.9%, 12 consecutive months of private sector job growth, but the participation rate, the percentage of people who have jobs or are looking for work, is the lowest in 25 years. Chris, what does all that tell you about the strength of this recovery?
Well, the recovery is still uncertain, and everybody knows that, and the people in Congress know that, the president knows that, and as we have this discussion about cuts and spending and all of these other things, looming very large in the background is everybody knows that this could go right over the cliff any time, and that this progress could be quickly reversed. So it adds a stark anxiety to the discussions in Washington about spending.
We're going to get to oil in a second, but taking that out of the equation and the spike in oil prices, Nina, when you look at all these numbers, what do you say?
Not to sound negative, because it was a note of a bit of a positive news this week, but it's a muted recovery, and this labor participation rate that you talked about is really key. The number of people who have given up aren't in the job market. Disability roles are increasing, continue to increase. So it means a lot of people are going on disability. A lot of people are going on or staying on government aid. And government aid, at a time when government aid is being targeted for cuts. So, and then there are a number of long-term unemployed people. That's what we have to worry about. And you have to worry about what that's going to do to this nation's psyche when you've got that many people still out of work, 6 months, a year, even 2 years and on. And I think that's going to be the most difficult nut for any candidate to crack, or any president to crack.
Meanwhile, Kevin, the unrest, I said take the oil out of the equation, now let's put it in. The unrest in the Mideast has contributed to a spike in oil prices. Let's take a look at that. Crude is now $104 a barrel. That's the highest in more than 2 years. A gallon of gas has jumped 10% this year, from $3.08 a gallon to $3.38 a gallon. Kevin, the rule of thumb is that for every 1 cent increase in the cost of a gallon of gas, that takes $1 billion of consumer spending away from all other areas except energy prices.
No, that's right. And in some places, you're looking at gas prices go up 3-4 cents a day. So, you know, that's a metric that every single voter, every single American feels every single day when they go to the gas pump. And so the metrics that we're seeing on the employment side, that is probably not going to be as much of a consolation for those people that are out of work, and then those ones that are going to work and they have to pay 3 cents a gallon just to fill up their tank. So I think that it's going to, you know, it could very well tamp down any sort of economic recovery that we see, and that's going to be, you know, that's going to be something that the White House is very worried about over the next few months.
You know, Juan, when gas prices spiked the last time, the Republicans really hammered Democrats on it, and the idea that their energy policy and their refusal to do a lot of domestic oil production was part of the problem. When you've got a weak recovery and you rise gas prices, that's a bad combination.
It is a bad combination, but it's directly tied to instability in the Middle East, to what we're seeing taking place in Libya, the threat. But, you know, I think most Americans understand that. I don't think they see this as a matter of an oil shortage. They see it as a matter of temporary instability. The question is how long this might last. But the good news this week is something that is boosting, actually boosting at this moment, consumer confidence in the country, and especially boosting the number of private employers who are willing to hire. That's the good news here. You look at manufacturing, you look at construction industries that have been down in the course of this recession, they're up now. This is a signal Americans are thinking that better times are coming. And most of the economists, the economic forecasters, are saying, yes, we see growth in this economy. To pick up on what Nina was saying, it's slow, It's not at the rate that we like. We know a lot of people are still discouraged, and that's why unemployment may actually go up subsequently because more people will get back into the labor market. But what we're seeing is indications that the economy is finally on the right path, and I don't see any reason to naysay that.
Well, there's another factor we've got to throw into all of this, Chris, and that is the battle that we just saw in the last segment over federal spending. There are some economists, Goldman Sachs, Mark Zandi, who say you cut federal spending by $61 billion, and it's going to have an impact, a negative impact on jobs and hiring. On the other hand, Ben Bernanke, the Fed chairman, was up this week on Capitol Hill and said it would have a much smaller effect, $61 billion in a multi-trillion-dollar economy.
Well, you know, the White House's best case scenario for the economy, as they laid out in their budget, is for some very anemic growth. But any sign of growth that comes forward hurts the Democrats' argument on cutting spending, because people, as things stabilize, as the economy normalizes, people say we have and Republicans are talking about cutting 1/30th of this year's projected $1.65 trillion deficit. For Democrats, and you heard Senator Durbin struggle with that, to push back against those cuts is very difficult because you're not talking about a huge amount of money. And for the president, the greater concern and the long-term concern is inflation that could come in and take away the modest signs of recovery if it digs in because of oil prices and these other things. So for the president, he's got to deal with deficit spending, entitlement reform, and other things if he doesn't want to see that eat his lunch.
Can I just jump in here on you're seeing the sort of classic application of Keynesian economics. Look, you cut government spending and therefore you're going to hurt the economy. There are other economists like John Taylor at Stanford who say, look, the problem is private investment is sitting on the sidelines because private investment is scared of higher taxes and the uncertainty and is being squeezed out by government spending. So in fact, cutting government spending in the long run and even in the medium run will actually help the economy. So I think, you know, there's a disagreement. We shouldn't just say it will automatically hurt the economy if you cut spending. The other thing you have to worry about, let's not put on blinders, there could be a debt crisis at some moment that's going to send our economy back into a tailspin. So you have to deal with that issue.
What a surprise that you could find an economist to back your own political view. All right, we have to take a break here. But when we come back, potential candidates begin dipping their toes in the presidential waters. The Sunday panel handicaps the likely field and tries to make sense of Newt Gingrich's non-announcement.
My expectation is that by the end of this exploratory process that we'll have an announcement and we'll be in the race. And I think it's very daunting, but it's also very exciting.
Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich getting ever so closer to formally announcing a run for the presidency, and we're back now with the panel. Well, you know, one of the few things that a candidate can control is how they get into a presidential race, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say that Newt Gingrich made a hash of it this week. Some of his aides said he was going to announce an exploratory committee on Thursday. Some said he wouldn't. In fact, he announced a website. Chris, what do you make of the non-entry into the race by the non-candidate?
Well, it could be part of a secret, brilliant strategy, but yes, on the cover, it's quite a hash and not the way you want to do it. And unfortunately for the former speaker, it reinforces a widely held concern about him in Republican circles, is that he is, as people say, brilliant but undisciplined. And I think for Gingrich, the problem is going to be going forward that he has to demonstrate that an organization, that he will be disciplined, that he will do what's supposed to happen. And what you saw this week was how quickly your message gets muddled and how quickly things get confused.
Nina, I think that we do all agree that Gingrich, whether you like or agree or disagree with him, is one of the most brilliant men in American politics. He also carries a lot of baggage, both personal baggage and professional baggage. How big a problem is all of that for him?
It's a problem. It's funny. I spent time with him for a profile I did back in 2007. And at the time, he was the big ideas guy. He wanted to put out these big ideas about reforming health care and so on. And he was by the way, very bipartisan. I mean, he would go into these bipartisan crowds and got standing ovations. And his idea was, I was going to put out these big ideas, and then people will recruit me, and I'll run. Now, flash forward, and he has a much harder edge now. He's, you know, the calling of President Obama as a socialist, which I think Newt Gingrich thinks is a big idea, but that's definitely not a big tent idea, I think, in his on his part. And the other issue he has is his personal life. As one religious conservative leader said to me, you know, one marriage too many. I mean, he's been married 3 times, and that's a problem.
All right. Meanwhile, on health care reform, President Obama took a shot at Mitt Romney this week, and let's take a look at that.
I agree with Mitt Romney, who recently said he's proud of what he accomplished on health care in Massachusetts and supports giving states the power to determine their own health care solutions. He's right.
But last night in New Hampshire, Romney responded, our experiment, meaning in Massachusetts, wasn't perfect. Some things worked, some didn't, and some things I'd change. One thing I would never do is usurp the constitutional power of states with a one-size-fits-all federal takeover. And he called for repeal of Obamacare. So, Kevin, and we have to say that you were a top advisor to Mitt Romney. Likelihood you will be if he decides to get in the race. Is that his answer to the comparisons of Obamacare and Romneycare?
Well, I think that's one part of it. Look, I think, you know, with related to what President Obama said, you know, I think he's proven that he's not a very good judge of what are good ideas and what are bad ideas. I think most people will tell you that it was not a good idea to craft a one-size-fits-all health care plan at a federal level and apply it to all 50 states with 50 unique health care populations. I don't think it was a good idea, and many Americans would agree, to spend $1 trillion at a time where we don't have it. So I think Governor Romney is going to make all of those cases and explain very, very succinctly, I think, is that he knows what went right, he knows what went wrong. As a governor, he's had those experiences.
But if I may, I think that the concern a lot of conservatives have is the principle, and it's not a question of, yes, they certainly don't like the idea of the federal government versus states, but they also don't like the idea of government getting involved in health care, and particularly the individual mandate, the principle of an individual mandate, government telling people you have to get health insurance.
Yeah, there's no doubt that is going to be a challenge. Look, many of the folks that are already looking at the presidential campaign on the Republican side have already attacked Governor Romney for that, and I think that's going to continue.
So what's his
I think the most
answer on
important thing he can do is talk about why he thought this was the right idea for the unique health care population of Massachusetts, how he thought it would help reduce costs, and how he thought it would help increase access. So I think if you leave that as a unique debate about what he did in Massachusetts, and then talk about what he would do on a federal level and how he wouldn't pursue that sort of one-size-fits-all approach for 50 states, then I think people will recognize that he's somebody who has an incredible command of the issue of health care. He knows what went right, and he knows what went wrong, and that's going to make him, I think, a valuable person for the debate on the Republican side.
Juan.
Well, I just think it's a difference without much in the way of discernment to most voters. Both men are interested in health care reform and health care plans. That's what pretty much, Kevin says, not one size fits all for the nation, but Romney was in charge of a state, and it was one size fits all for the state. I think the problem for Romney also speaks to the conservative base. That Gingrich, can go out there as the idea man and say, oh, I had this idea, and I was the one who reclaimed Congress after a Democratic hold for 4 decades. But, the problem with someone like Gingrich's lack of discipline, as you were saying, he appeals, though, to that conservative base in some way. But with Romney, you have to start looking at flops on abortion, immigration. A lot of those issues just pop up, and people are saying, well, is this a guy, even though he's the front runner, that really holds the conservative flag in some passionate way against Obama? And I just wonder if that's true.
I think where I disagree is that many folks who are offering an absolute analysis about this issue as it relates to the race think it's going to be the only issue. And I don't think it's going to be the only issue. I think the main issue everybody's going to be asking themselves is, who's going to run this country right? Who's going to get the economy going? And I think he has an incredible argument to make to the Republican electorate and a national electorate, when that happens.
Well, okay, I want to move on, excuse me, but I want to move on to the other candidates, because one of the interesting questions this year is who is actually going to run. And let's put up 4 of the question marks, 4 potential candidates: Huckabee, Palin, Barber, Mitch Daniels. Chris, who gets in and who stays out?
Well, the Republicans are, what the Republicans want is Chris Christie. So now they want somebody who
Chris Christie has made it clear. He says, what do I have to do? Commit suicide?
He has
so
been,
I take him at his word.
More than Sherman-esque in his vows. Now skin his vows. Now skin his vows. Now Sherman skin his vows. Now skin his vows. Now Sherman skin his vows. Now skin his vows. Now skin his vows. Now Sherman skin his vows. Now skin his vows. Now Sherman skin his vows. Now skin his vows. vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. Now Sherm skin his vowels. Now skin his vowels. A very telling statement that Daniels made that was recapitulated to me from an advisor of his was basically this: if his agenda in Indiana precludes him from running for president, so be it. And
okay,
I think that's a strong
because
sign.
We're going to run out of
out.
time. Huckabee, Palin, Barber, Daniels, who gets in, who stays out?
Barber in. I believe the signs are all pointing towards a Barber run. Daniels out. Huckabee, Palin, I'd say right now out and out, but it'll be very tempting if the field doesn't get stronger.
And you're missing one. John Huntsman, I think, is making signs towards a run.
And who is he?
I'm sorry.
No, I want you to explain. I know who he is.
And by the way, I also have to do my disclaimer. My husband's an advisor to Romney. Huntsman is currently President Obama's ambassador to China, and he's leaving shortly, and he's got a team of advisors around him, and it looks like he might make a run. He was also a very popular governor of Utah.
Here, since we're running out of time.
Yes, because you are the expert on Republicans, but go ahead.
I am, but I'd help you out. I know it. But let me tell you, 4 years ago, you had 8 Republicans in the race at this time. Today, you have 0 if you eliminate Herman Cain, who I don't think has much of a chance.
Why are you
So,
eliminating Herman Cain?
but let me just say,
Wait,
and the reason for this is people don't think Obama's beatable. If you look at his numbers,
that isn't why.
Only Ford, I think it's Ford, Carter,
You really
and
think
Bush
that Mitt Romney
have
isn't in the
lost
race because he's
a
scared of
second
Obama?
term. What?
You really think that Mitt Romney isn't in the race because he's scared of Obama?
Scared of Obama in the race to raise his profile, raise his speaking fees, and sell books. He's not in the race.
Anyway, thank you, panel. You know, this is what we invented Panel Plus for, because we're going to get this straight. So don't forget to check out Panel Plus, where our group here will pick up right with this discussion on our website, foxnewssunday.com, and we promise we'll post the video before noon Eastern Time.